Hello, and welcome to the Real Estate and Business Success Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Jimmerson, your Southeast Alabama luxury realtor with first class real estate wiregrass. In this podcast, we're diving deep into the intersection of real estate and business to uncover what makes successful entrepreneurs tick. Each week, I'll be interviewing top business owners and investors from the Wiregrass region and beyond, exploring how they've achieved enduring success and how their strategies can apply to both real estate and other industries. Whether you're a real estate professional or a business enthusiast, get ready to gain valuable insights, discover new strategies, and elevate your own success. Let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to the Real Estate and Business Success Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Jimmerson. Thank you for tuning in today, whether you're listening and on the podcast or watching my video on my YouTube channel, Wiregrass Real Estate Realtor. Today, I have with me Jake Leicht, founder of Flip Secrets and real estate investor. Thanks for being on the show today, man.
You got it, Ben. Hey, thanks for having me, and thank you for pronouncing my last name correctly. I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, got to get that, man. Can't have that. So I mentioned he's founder of Flip Secrets. What's Flip Secrets all about, Jake?
Yeah, so yes, I am the founder, the CEO, the visionary, and previously the janitor and all that kind of stuff. I'm a real estate investor. I've been flipping houses, wholesaling, co-selling, all that kind of stuff for about 13 years now. And for the last 5 years, I've had a consultative coaching mentorship type program. And it's essentially like it's my brainchild of what I wish I had when I first started getting into the game. There's a ton of stuff that I learned about real estate where I had a lot of false belief patterns about what it took to get into the business. And when I got in, I was broke. And so there were little things along the way that I was like, man, if I had this or this resource or knew this or took this angle, my time, I would have been able to collapse timeframes a lot better. So put that together. We've got about 3,000 different clients all over the country, and we get to teach people this beautiful and very lucrative game of real estate investing. It's pretty fun, man.
Awesome, man. I love it. That seems to be the common theme when anybody creates something, whether it's a course or a coaching program, whatever it is, it's something they wish that they would have had when they started because there was nothing out there, or maybe there was something out there, but nothing like it needed to be, which is probably the way that you've made it.
I'd argue that there's a lot of people out there that just do it because they're trying to make some money too. Not
Yeah.
everybody's doing it because it's like, oh, there's this missing piece. There's a lot of opportunists out there that are like, hey, I read this in a book. I'm really good at marketing. Let me do a course or something. Sometimes I'll say I'm very reluctantly a guru, and for better or for worse, because there's a lot of skepticism out there about the whole guru thing. If you ever read the comments on my paid ads, you'd see that not everybody thinks the guru route is the most moral. Yeah.
Not everybody's a fan, huh?
Yeah, that's okay. Not everybody's a fan of anything.
No, anytime you run paid ads and not everybody's a fan. Me being a realtor, I'm running an ad right now on a new massive subdivision, and I don't think I've gotten one good comment. It's all been hate of they hate that farmland is gone now. They hate that the city's encroaching in on the county by having that subdivision. And it's like the one guy was like, "Oh, farmland's gone. Why did the person sell it in the first place? It must have not been that great." So it's like, why do you even? But
Yeah. No, I was going to say that's an interesting thing about social media and advertising, or not even like paid advertising, but even just promotion on social media, is everybody has this feeling of having a green light to be able to tell you what they feel and what they think and express, what it is they feel about whatever your message is. And that's okay, right? That's the point of things. I found that, and at first when I started running ads, and this was about 5 years ago, I would read every comment and I would be responding to people like, please believe me. No, I swear, like I do flip houses with OPM. And then it got to a point where it's like, I just can't read the comments. I don't Google myself because there's good, there's bad, there's ugly. But going back to the interesting thing, and I can be long-winded, Ben, so you feel free to cut
Go for it.
Go for it. One thing that I've learned when it comes to not necessarily running ads for like real estate and wholesaling and stuff like that, but for the coaching business is like the temperature gauge on negative comments or people telling me to piss off or whatever it is. Typically, if I have those, then also silently our business does better. Like we have more people that are saying, yeah, I need that help. Like I resonate with this. So it's typically people that hate you are very comfortable with communicating that publicly, and the people that align with whatever message you're trying to do typically come in or raise their hand privately. So that's an interesting little, I guess you call it a dichotomy that I've learned about it. But it's still, we're human. Sometimes I will go and I'll see my own ad and then I'll see the comments. I'm like, geez, this person really dislikes me. Do I know them? What's going on here? But that's the game. And I've also, and I would say this to you too, if you have people that are criticizing you on your ads, that means that your message is clear and concise enough for them to be able to form an opinion on it, right? It means they understand what you're trying to say. And so I always look at that too. It's if this message is clear enough for people to form a negative opinion or just complete, I don't know if I can cuss on here. They can just crap
Whatever,
on
dude. Yeah.
Yeah, people are going to shit on me on public comments. That means that it's clear enough for them to form an opinion, which I try to take that as a win as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's different ways to look and think about it. And what I mean is, one thing I've heard is you're doing something right if you've got haters.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then also, well, I've had this conversation a lot lately, especially anything, any kind of post that's like political or
Oh, yeah.
drama or funny is what gets a lot of attention. But more so, what I'm thinking about is like there's a news station here locally, which there's news stations locally everywhere,
Uh,
and they're the media, right? The whole point of anything they post is to get attention. And so they're
mhm,
always going to post something controversial
mhm.
or that they know people are going to hate because that gets the most attention. And so in return, like it's boosting their views, it's helping them out. And so people don't realize that by making those comments, even though they're hating on you, it's like, thanks, man. You just helped
Yeah,
me out. You
yeah,
know, like, I mean,
yeah.
appreciate it.
It does, and I know you're talking about radio media, but when it comes to social media advertising, people are commenting, it boosts the algorithm and it gets in front of
It
more people.
does.
Now, whether it gets in front of people that like you or hate you based on that algorithm, that's another story, probably for
Yeah.
another podcast. But yeah, like a big thing with marketing is polarization. If there's something that's polarizing or, like you said, controversial, like that captures people's attention. And it's an attention game when it comes to this phone, right? People are scrolling, and you've got folks that are intentionally polarizing that says something where they say something in order to capture your attention, which is a very valuable resource. They'll say something to get you to, they call it stop the scroll. But
Yep.
sometimes being too polarizing or like intentionally polarizing to capture it, sometimes that can negatively affect somebody's personal brand. There's still like a line to toe, I think, when it comes to that kind of stuff. But what I didn't expect is that teaching people or just talking about what I do in real estate, if I did a deal and I talk about it and I say, here's my contractor costs and here's how I got it funded. I didn't know that in general would be polarizing to a lot of people. Because I'm not offending anybody. I'm just talking about what I just did. And they're like, bullshit, you're lying and you're a terrible person. And check your DMs because I'm going to threaten you. So, oh, just for being a capitalist involved in real estate? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's an
Uh,
extreme example, but that's one
It
thing I didn't
happens.
expect is that business in general, just sharing something I did, whether it's good or bad, like even sharing a failure would be polarizing to people in the general public. But
Yeah, it's
that's
crazy,
the way of
man.
the world, man.
So, real estate, flipping houses, what inspired you to start your journey in real estate investing over 13 years ago?
Over 13 years ago, I was just a baby, Ben. I just turned 40. What's today? The 17th? 2 weeks ago, I turned 40. So that was,
Happy late birthday.
thank you. I was 26, just about to turn 27 when I got into it.
You
I
still
mean,
look that.
yeah, I feel better than I did 20 years ago. I eat right and I work out and I try to treat everything as a game. And I think being lighthearted with stuff helps. But I'll take all the compliments that you're willing to give me. I appreciate that. But to the non-sexy reason I got into real estate was I wanted to make money. I've played sports my whole life. I went to college. I have a business degree. In college, I didn't go to class or pay attention. I just crammed for tests, and it's the whole C's get degrees thing. But I wanted to make money, and and it also seemed like the easiest route was going through a business. And I'm saying that doesn't make me look very good, but that's the truth. Like maybe at some point start a business, but it seemed like there was the most options when it came to having a business degree. Graduated college in 2006, got my first job as a sales guy for 4 or 5 years with an IT company. And I had like social anxiety and a fear of talking to people at the time. So you could probably imagine I was a really interesting sales guy whose job was to talk to people all the time. But I just learned how to be an adult and have confidence and be over prepared for stuff so I could be in conversations with people. So even if I was nervous, I was still, excuse me, even if I was nervous, I was still prepared. The company got bought out, quit that job, and I watched a movie called The Secret, a documentary. Have you heard of that?
I don't think so.
The law of attraction. And it's corny, but it pretty much, if I was to summarize it, it's if you think happy thoughts, you'll have a happy life. If you think prosperous thoughts, you'll have a prosperous life. If you think abundant thoughts, you have an abundant life. And then the inverse was also true, which is if you think bad thoughts or nervous thoughts or anxious thoughts, typically bad stuff or nervousness or anxiousness manifests, right? So I got that. Okay, if I think happy thoughts or like rich people thoughts, I'll be a rich dude. And I also read a book called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. So I was like, oh, I could think happy thoughts, work 4 hours a week, become a millionaire. I'd love to become a millionaire. So instead of trying to get a different job or stay with that company that got bought out, they wanted to keep me. Instead, I quit my job and tried to start a virtual assistant business. And I had no idea what I was doing. I had nobody taught me how to start a business or generate. I knew how to do sales and talk to people. So I was willing to work. And I probably had 16, 17, somewhere around there, $1,000 saved up from like sick leave once the company got bought out. And that was more money than I had ever had. And 6 months later, I had $600 in my bank account. And I was like, I had bought a house in 2009 for 130 grand. My mortgage payment was $950. There's a reason I'm telling you all this. I know I could be long-winded, but I made payments. It was in September of 2011. I made all my payments and then my mortgage payment, my car payment, paid my bills. And it was like, I have 690 something bucks in my bank account. I can't pay. There's something that's not going to be able to be paid. And although I owned the house and it was cheaper than renting, I didn't know what foreclosure was. And so I was like literally writing a failure plan. Oh man, what do I have to go work at Starbucks or Home Depot? Like, where can I go get a job? I'm going to be embarrassed. I had this girl that I started dating literally like a week or two after I quit that job and tried to start a business. Or friends, like I had this identity as entrepreneur, but in reality, I was broke entrepreneur. And so I'm looking up, okay, whose couch am I going to sleep on? What happens? How much time do I have if I don't make my payment? What's foreclosure? How are they going to repo the house? And I saw on Zillow or Redfin that my house that I was paying $950 for that I couldn't afford if I didn't make any more money over the next 4 weeks was renting out for between $1,400 and $1,500 a month. I was like, oh shit. Wait, so if I may have to sleep on someone's couch, if this is true, like I won't lose the house and I'll actually make $500 a month just having someone else live there.
It's awesome.
For real? Like I got a business degree and I started like doing research. That was when the seed was planted about real estate. And I started looking stuff up. It's like 90% of self-made millionaires created their wealth through real estate. And you just see this over and over. And that percentage changes with different articles and different blogs and stuff like that. But it was like this common theme. And I was like, it'd be nice to make some money and get another house. Because if I do that twice, then I make $1,000 a month. And because with my house, it was FHA loan. I probably put a $9,000 down payment on it or something like that, $8,000. So I was like, I got to figure out a way to make money so I could save and maybe do that again. Like maybe that's how you create wealth. And I saw an infomercial a couple of days later on a dude from HGTV who was saying, hey, you can become a real estate millionaire. It's like the most cliche infomercial, like nice music in the background, like a pharmaceutical company, people running on the beach in slow motion. This dude with like perfect teeth. He's like, you can do this. And then he said that what was the kicker was, and you could do it without a dime out of your own pocket. And I was like, oh, check my boxes. Like, I want to become a millionaire. Real estate supposedly is the way, and I'm broke. So it's like all these things. Oh, I can do it then. And I don't believe in coincidences. I think I was supposed to see that at that time. And I was like, what are they about to sell? What are they trying to sell? And they were selling a book. It was a free book, but they're shipping and handling on it. And so I had $7. I didn't have 700, but I had 7. So I bought it. They overnighted it. And I read the book. It was like a marketing book. And a sales dude called me about a seminar. And I didn't have the money for it. I told him I was an entrepreneur, didn't tell him I was broke. And everything just checked out. And the girl that I was dating at the time, she increased the limit on her credit card to $10,000. The seminar was 15 grand. I didn't have that. And she co-signed on 2 credit cards with me. And I found myself in a seminar like a week and a half later, 2 weeks later. It was like September 23rd of 2001. And that's how I learned. That's when I got my start in real estate. I haven't looked back. that's my wife now too. That's Carlene. I was dating her. She saw the ups and the downs. Even once we started getting into real estate and having success, like I had some big failures, and she's been the ride or die there the whole time. That kind of made sacrifices to allow me to be able to do this, and now in turn help other people do it. I got 3 kids, a dog, a couple mortgages. That's my number one. So
Awesome,
that's
man.
how I started. I know you probably were expecting like a quick 90-second response to that, but I would be doing myself and my wife a disservice if I didn't go into that whole story.
You'd be doing the listeners a disservice to get down to the nitty gritty. But like I told you in the beginning, that's what this podcast is all about: is the real and the raw. We don't want the fluff. We want to know exactly what it is, why, when,
Yeah.
how.
I
I
will
love it,
tell
man.
you, if you want the real and the raw, it wasn't easy. The concepts are relatively simple, but it wasn't easy being somebody. I grew up in a lower middle class family. I didn't grow up in poverty or anything, but I didn't have real estate or business ownership or entrepreneurship in my, it was foreign to me. And so I didn't understand the person that one has to become in order to handle the opportunity that you can create for yourself. Like creating opportunity in real estate is, I hesitate to say easy, but I would say it's relatively simple if you have it on a piece of paper. But going in and applying the different things and getting out of our own way, it's relatively challenging. And different people have different false belief patterns that they have to shatter, and different habits that they have to shatter, and different views on self, personal accountability that they have to get rid of. And that's hard. Taking 100% ownership for the wins and the losses is a very difficult thing. It was for me. It continues to be for me.
No, I love that you say that because you're literally following up with my last podcast. So we talked about that, about leadership and taking 100% ownership of everything, because ultimately it falls on you every single time. So
Yeah.
yeah, glad you said that.
Yeah. Say business leadership is a different story where it's even more exaggerated, but just in business in general, yeah, it's everybody wants. This is who had the quote. I think it might have been Alex Hormozy. Because like, everybody wants the view, but nobody wants the climb, right? The climb is it's it, if you learn to do something new or learn about business, like the business part, there's a straight line that you can go down and understand how it works. But there's a parallel journey of self-development that you like are forced to go through. And that's when you have this pressure and you have this self-dialogue where you're like, can I do this? Am I cut out for it? Am I worth it? Is success here yet? How long does it take? And there's a lot of challenges with that. I heard another metaphor. They said businesses, if you were waiting for like a subway, and I'm from California, live in Knoxville, I never had the subway systems or the train systems, but a big thing was people complained that the trains were too slow. And rather than whatever city it was going in and spending billions of dollars to make a faster train, instead what they did is put the little dot system on like the map that says, okay, like the train stops here, train stops here, it's going to be 8 more minutes or whatever it is. And that because people knew what to expect and when their stop would be or when the train comes, that like calm people down. They could plan. Real estate, it's or business in general. You don't got those dots. So it's, man, when's it going to come? I feel like it could take forever. I don't know when that next checkpoint's going to be. Like, that's what makes it challenging because you feel like you're crazy. You have the angel and the devil in your ear. Like, I'm putting everything in for this. You can do it. And the other side is, should I just give up? Am I embarrassing myself? So it's the constant battle, and you just learn to, in real estate as well as in business in general, you learn to tell the devil to shut up a little bit. You get a little bit more immune to it as you go, and you understand these are like normal. This is my emotional reactions as a human. Getting out of my comfort zone, that's what happens. And so if I'm out of my comfort zone, I have those negative thoughts and positive thoughts and the chaos that comes along with that. It's, oh, okay. The way I frame it is I'm growing. So of course I'm feeling like this. So let's lean into the positive and let's put our head down. Do some work. you know?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Being in business and especially real estate too, it all applies. That's why this is the Real Estate and Business Success podcast, because it goes together. But I think the biggest thing in business and real estate, it's the time that it takes to reap those rewards. And that's just not a common thing that we're used to growing up. Most people don't turn 16 and are flipping homes, or they're in real estate, or they're not starting a business. So they don't, and it's not like it's taught. We're not taught this in school. So we're used to, we're going to work a week and we'll get paid next week or every 2 weeks or something like that. And there's a clear cut plan because some entrepreneur has put that together for you. So you get so used to that, and then you get into real estate, you get into business and you realize you have to put in so much work 30, 60, 90 days before you ever see anything from that. And so that's what I think about with what you said is that's why you're wondering, should I keep going? Should I quit? Because there kind of is those little dots.
Hmm.
They're so far away that it just doesn't feel right. So you're like, man, is this the right path? It's just like on the last podcast, I was interviewing a guy, he's a real estate coach. And when you get into real estate as a realtor, most realtors don't see their first check for 6 months. That's insane,
Yeah.
right?
That's a
But
tough job, man. I
yeah,
work with realtors often, and yeah, I get it.
so I always tell our agents, whatever you do today, you're not going to see for the next 30, 60, possibly 90 days or even longer. And so it's just hard to conceptualize that internally as a human being and be like, is this really where I need to be? But Jake, the guy I was interviewing, told a story about some agents that were like broke and they put everything into it. And they were at like their 90-day mark and they would came to him and crying and they were like, what do we do? We don't have the money to renew our license or whatever. He's like, look, everything that you've done, if you told me is true, something's about to happen. So whatever you need to do, go figure out, scrape, find the money. And they did. And sure enough, next thing they were doing 10 million in volume, top producers in the company coming from new nobodies to making more money than they ever have before. And they just stuck it out.
Yeah. And this guy's name was Jake also?
Yeah, yeah, his name's
Strong
Jake.
name, bro. Strong
Yeah,
name. What's up?
yeah,
What's up, Jake from the previous podcast? That's awesome. With real estate, there's a few, there's so much good stuff that we talk about with what you just said. With the one thing, the first three things I'll unravel. First, they don't teach real estate investing or even financial like responsibility in school. I think that's one of the biggest tragedies or travesties or whatever word you want to put. I think that's one of the worst things. That's a big thing that needs to change. And that's one of the driving factors of me doing my education thing. Second, you were mentioning something about with you don't know when that next dot is. And one of the really challenging things, whether it's with real estate agents, whether it's with real estate investors, is some people's dot comes quicker than others. Some people get lucky. Luck is a big part of entrepreneurship. There's hard work, there's like being prepared so you don't have to get prepared, anticipating things, being proactive. But there's a little bit of, oh man, this opportunity came at the right time. And I know some people argue that luck's not a thing. You create your own luck. And yeah, I get that. Also, another conversation for another time. And our tendencies to compare ourselves to other people on social media. And I'm not a real estate agent, but real estate agents on social media all the time with they're happy, they're closing deals and stuff. It's man, she can do it. Like, when am I going to get that? So the comparison thing's really tough. And the fact that people have different finish lines, or not finish lines, but checkpoint or time frames to get to those checkpoints, that makes things challenging. But ultimately, I think with what the previous podcast Jake said, which is if it's true that you put all of these inputs in, you're going to have an output. Yeah, it's going to come. And now it came, right? I think that business, it's for the savages, right? Like the people that know that there's something bigger and they want to make a bigger impact, make bigger money, whatever it is, whatever their lifestyle by design happens to be. But it's the winning the game is playing the game, right? Like you have to get up and play the game every day, even if the results aren't on the scoreboard or whatever. So there's no guarantee that you can get to, you're going to beat the final boss if we're talking about video games. The win is actually being in the arena. This is what makes it. So I said, this game is for savages, but it's a sick game because to win is just to play your best every day. And you can't guarantee that you'll beat the end boss ever, right? There's always new bosses that come, right? Like the boss that's in front of me right now, it's man, I thought I made it. And then 5 new bosses came. It's like, how the hell am I going to beat these guys? But there is a definitive way to lose, a definite way to lose. And that's to give up, to quit, right? So it's to win is to play and play as hard as you can, play to win, right? Be competitive, but there's no guarantee how big that win's going to be. But if you give up, that's surefire way to lose. So you have to frame it as to play the game is to win. Like it's the journey, not the destination, which is a super corny quote, but it's very applicable. That's where I say real estate, but you can use that interchangeably with business in general. That's why it's so hard because you just have to play. And it's not, oh, I'm going to get to the end. and I got my bonus and I got my vacation and everything. There's no definitive measure of what the win will be. You just know that if you put those inputs in, you're going to get some type of reward for it. And it may come next month. It may come in 6 months with real estate agents. Dude, you could be working on $1 million deal with a fat commission, and then somebody loses their job and their loan doesn't go through or something like that after you've, and you just have to keep playing, right? You have to keep playing. And to play is to win. I know I said that 4 times. Because if you give up, you're guaranteed to lose if you stop.
And I'm so glad that you talked. I'm so glad you talked about that, because honestly, I don't really consider myself like successful of where I want to be at, but I'm definitely more successful than a lot of other agents. But I would say that's the number one thing that helped me to get to where I'm at now is when I started real estate 7 years ago. That was the one thing that I kept telling myself, because same thing, like when I was researching, okay, I want to get out of this rat race. I know I can't work for somebody. I could just never, I'm a big analyzer. And so all the businesses I would work for, I'd get in and I'd analyze the entire structure right away. Like, how can I move up? Is there room to move up? Are there family friends in the way or good old boy system in the way that's going to stop me from being able to do that? And also, are they doing the right things? I'm sure they thought I was some crazy young kid telling them what I think we should do. And then you hear, oh, that's just not how we do it around here, and they could like really expand themselves a lot further if they did. But man, I totally lost my train of thought on that.
No, but I got you're giving me gold over here. They always think you're crazy when you start until you have the result, and that's another challenge with the internal part of the game. Everybody, oh, are you sure? You might as well play it safe. What are you doing? Get it, you're trying to show off like he's changed, that type of stuff. Oh, I don't know. You may be getting scammed. I don't know if you can do it. And then you start having results, and they're like, I knew he could do it the whole time. I always believed in that guy.
Yeah, so I remember now. So just in general, just talking about not quitting, I got down a rabbit hole there for a second, but that's what I told myself in the beginning is that I'm not going to quit this. I don't care. Literally, I've told myself so many times, especially when I was getting started, I was by myself. I said, I don't care if I literally have to live in a cardboard box behind some business somewhere or in the woods. Like, I'm not going to quit this until I get to the point where doing well in this. And in business, whatever it is that you do, whether it's becoming a realtor, getting into real estate investing, or any kind of business at all, you have to understand that you have to have this full, firm faith and belief that this is what I'm going to do. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what happens. I don't care if I fail 100 times. I'm going to get up 101 times, and that's going to be it. Or if it's 1,000 times, just look back at, and I'm going down a rabbit hole here.
No, go down, and I'm with you. I'm going down with you, man.
Look at all the great people that have created things like electricity and the telephone. If you actually go back and look at how many times they failed, it's insane. And that's not what people are used to. Most people are going to quit after one time, or 3 or 5 times. But it may take 100, it may take 1,000 times before you succeed. And it's just all about failing forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. Failure is one of the core tenets. We use failure as data points rather than failure as like the end of the world. Like failure is not an emotional thing with people in my company, especially leadership team, with our education company. Failure is data points. Failure can only be bad. It never feels good to fail. I'm going to preface it with this, but failure in the big picture of things can only be bad if you don't adapt from the feedback of that data point. If you do something and you do it wrong, you make a mistake or whatever it is, and you realize you made this mistake and you don't change your behavior or whatever the input is, it can be bad if you keep repeating it. But failure can be beautiful if you take that feedback as the game, whatever game you're in. I always call it the game. If you take that failure as a data point on, it's the game punching you back, right? And it's telling you, hey, you're not playing it right. So if you adapt based on that data point that the game is giving you, failure is a beautiful thing. You just don't want to keep failing doing the same shit over and over.
Yeah, well, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So
yeah.
So back to real estate investing and flipping homes.
Yeah. Out of the rabbit hole. We're crawling back out. I'm gonna go back into it. I can already tell. I can feel we're gonna go back into the rabbit hole.
So what are some common misconceptions about using other people's money for real estate and investing? And so real quick for anybody listening in, when you hear OPM, it stands for other people's money.
Yes, OPM, other people's money, private money, opposite, not the opposite, but it's not the bank, right? It's not the Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase. We're talking private individuals. So the question is common misconceptions, right? So I flipped 1,012 houses. We passed that 1,000 barrier like 2 months ago, which is, I'm proud of that.
Congrats.
Thank you, thank you. And when I first started, I had to use OPM because I had my first deal. I was living off my girlfriend at the time, my future wife, in order to stay in that house, right? She moved in, she covering the bills, making sure I was eating, right? And I bought a house for 160 grand. And I had, if you looked at my personal bank account, it was like at that point, like $400 because she was fronting on my bills. I still paid for a couple things. I had to use OPM. And what I learned in that seminar, and a lot of people trash the seminar space. I came from the seminar space. So like I have so much conviction of the alternative education that's out there. That's how I got my start. But I needed to have the money. Now, this far later, I could buy the house, fund the rehab 10 times over myself. But I still use, I would say, I'm gonna give you a couple of different stats, and these are approximate. I would say 99% of the time I use 100% other people's money on every deal that I do. Like I bought over the last 45 days, I don't know, 4 or 5 houses that I'm currently flipping. The rehab that's going on, the contractor that's probably texting me with my phone on silent, looking for payment for whatever job they're doing, it comes from private lenders. So I would say the biggest misconceptions, at least to the public, and these are the same ones that I had, is number one, in order to access OPM, private money, to be able to flip a house. This is non-owner occupied. I know real estate agents listen to this, so they know what that means. You can't live in the home. But for non-owner occupied houses, you don't have to have a minimum credit score, specific tax returns, experience. They're not taking like a blood sample and seeing what you've done, looking at your cameras for the last 10 years in your house in order to give you a loan. They're basing it off of the property that you have under contract. It's after repair value, meaning what it's worth after you do your renovations to it, what we call them rehab costs, but renovation fees are, and how big on paper from the after repair value going down, subtracting everything, getting to your purchase price, the amount of profit that you have on the deal on paper, that's what opens the floodgates for private money literally battling each other for the opportunity to give you their cash to not only buy the house, but to flip the house, cover your closing costs, your holding costs, and everything in between. It literally is, if structured correctly, $0 out of your own pocket. So the misconception is a lot of people think that because they don't have that experience or their credit scores trash or whatever it is, or that they don't know construction, they think that they can't access that money. And the only thing that it is understanding numbers and being able to get control of a property by getting something under contract.
Yeah, that's what I've learned. If you can find a deal, analyze and underwrite a deal, and you get it in front of enough people, you'll be able to find the money.
Absolutely. And a lot of those people that are writing the checks for that kind of stuff, they are paying money. And we'll bring it back to the beginning, in paid ads to try to find people like us or people that are just getting into the game that they can lend their money to. Back in 2012 is like the third deal that I did. I still have I use the same lenders often now from 2012 here to 2024. This is 2024 when we're recording this, by the way, internet world, using a lot of those same lenders. So a lot of them have a vested interest in finding somebody that's brand new so they can create rapport with them, be able to grow with them and make money with them as they go. The lenders make money on these deals too.
Oh,
So
absolutely. Especially now that they know and trust you. They know when you come to them that they're not even probably questioning it anymore. They're just like, how much do you need?
yeah, I still come prepared, but yeah, I could call a number of one of 20 different lenders and say, hey, I've got this. I need to close it like in 5 days. Here's the numbers. I'll text you the links to what it can sell for and how I can prove that. And you think you could wire the money in 72 hours? And I could do that. It's not like that when you first start out. You have to show that you're prepared. You don't necessarily have to show that everything. You just need to show that you understand what it can sell for, understand what you're going to do to it. You understand the process of why it's going to make profit. And these lenders These lenders, they minimize risk by making sure that you as the borrower make the most money you possibly can. So it's like checks and balances with the lenders too. And they have the ability, also circling back to the beginning of our conversation, they do have the ability to foreclose on the property if something happens that's wrong. So them confirming that your numbers are correct, not necessarily your background or anything like that, but if the numbers are correct, if God forbid, like if a lender is lending on my deal, God forbid I get hit by a car and I can't carry out that job, they can take control of that property through foreclosure and they can finish it off and get their money back. So the collateral, or like the main points of underwriting, using your term, in determining whether or not they're going to give a loan, it's not me, although I'm sure they'd like to work with me because I have a track record, but it's not me, it's the property. So if I can control the right property with the right numbers, the floodgates open. There's hundreds of billions of dollars out there for all of us.
Yeah, and for somebody listening in, just from what you just said, something that I think about, there's different ways to go about it, but one type of loan that people use is called a DSCR loan, where it's not based off of your income. You do have to have decent credit, but it's more so based off the deal. And does the deal make sense? Do the numbers make sense?
And you've heard, I'm sure most people have heard of hard money, right?
Yeah.
You've heard of hard money. A lot of people have a negative connotation with the word hard money, and it's not called hard money because like hard to get or it's like hard to work with them. It's
Or they
because
think it's a
it's
loan shark.
it's backed by a hard asset, right? Like I'm knocking on like a house is a hard asset, and that's why they're called hard money loans. But I still to this day use hard money loans. With a DSCR loan, you may not be able to acquire property depending on the condition that it's in. A hard money loan, that house could be leaning over, about to fall down, mold in the roof, like no lights, there's no electricity to the house at all. And they will happily lend you this money because it's not about the current condition of the home, but it's what the home can become. And typically a hard money lender has co-control of the renovation budget. So so there's a check and balance of a contractor not screwing you over too. Which is why, like, just using that, if I have a hard money lender that'll fund the deal, I usually use a combination of a hard money lender plus what's called a gap funder that covers my down payment for the hard money lender. So two different loans, a first position loan and a second position loan. But a hard money lender controls the contractor getting paid. The contractor doesn't get advanced money, so they're not taking money up front and then fleeing out of the country. So just with those two resources combined, being on our power team, this is what we teach. I love this stuff. I go as deep as you want into it. Just based on those two things, whether there's a property down the street from you or clear across the country from you, that process allows for everybody to be on the up and up, where it minimizes risk because the person with the financial interest is controlling the money that goes to the contractor. The contractor's not trying to get money for stuff that hasn't been done yet. And then once that process is done and the property's in its top condition, where it can't be any better than this, it's going to sell for its maximum value in that neighborhood. That's when we bring in you beautiful people, which are real estate agents, because they're the ones that are putting the sign up. They're doing the marketing. Who knows? Maybe they're doing a dance on TikTok to get people to go to the house. You strike me as a TikTok dancing kind of guy, Ben.
Not at all.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We were talking about this earlier. I coach my kids' baseball teams. We had practice last night. Like I got 2 games this weekend. Like I coach basketball, team manager on soccer. Side note, never be the team manager of a soccer team. It's terrible. But I do that on the weekends, and my real estate agents are making fat commissions because they're the ones that are intercepting this communication from potential buyers that have interest in the property, right? If you were listing my property, I can be coaching baseball and you're negotiating or giving information that's needed, or even opening up the house for somebody that calls you and wants you to be a dual representation agent or something like that. Then the reason I'm talking about all this stuff is that it makes it so that I'm working on the business rather than in the business. I'm not swinging the hammer. I'm not using my cash. I'm not dealing with people calling me over the weekend because they want to get into the house. Now, each of those people gets paid, and if that happens successfully and we can replicate that process over and over, I can have a very strong revenue stream. With me living in Knoxville, Tennessee, I can have one in Northern California where I never step foot inside the property. I've got my contractors that are getting paid and putting food on the table. Got my agents that love me because they're listing these properties without having to drive me around to 30 houses over the weekend so I can check things out, look at the backyard. Like, it's a numbers game for me. Everybody gets paid and I get everything that's left over after the dust settles. And we're at closing or whatever you're in Alabama, so I don't know what they call it, closing or close of escrow or whatever it is, right? Different areas call it different things, but from key to key, at the end of it, everybody's paid, title company gets theirs, they pay my property taxes or whatever it is, and everything that's left over comes to me, and I just do it again and again.
That's awesome, man. I love that. So how can you share some tips for negotiating favorable terms with investors or partners when using OPM?
Yeah, specifically when using OPM. So when it comes to money.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you first get in, it's going to be different based on your experience level as far as negotiating favorable terms. Most of the time, a lender will do one of two things, regardless of if it's me that's done 1,000 or somebody else that it's their first one. They're going to say they have it's called an LTV, a loan to value, and they're going to say either I'll give you 70% or 65% of the after repair value, which is what it can resell for, or a lot of times they'll be like, I'll give you 90% of the purchase price plus 100% of the rehab, or 80%, 85% of the purchase price and 100% of the rehab. So they have these LTV things that they're not changing it for anyone. Maybe if I asked nicely and I was like, I'll feature you on one of my pages, like maybe I could get that. I've never even positioned that. But at first, like the one thing that may change between somebody really experienced and somebody brand new is they may charge a percentage rate higher. So instead of, and they're compared to a regular mortgage, like these are much higher, even with the high mortgage rates, like it's 9 to 12% in interest only payments. So at first, like when I first started, my first one, I paid 15%, but I held the property for 3 months. So realistically, I paid what, 4.5% or something like that over the course of 3 months. Yeah, the tips to it are first off, everything's negotiable. So you always ask, hey, yeah, I see that you quoted me 11.5%. Is there any way I can get it to 10.5%? That would be really helpful in making sure that I stay safe and you stay safe. And they may say, no, you'll be just fine here. But I ask, and so I have a hard money lender script. It's, hey, with successful repeat business, is your rate negotiable? Typically, everything else is staying the same. The amount of money that they're going to give you is going to stay the same. So you can always ask, but the reason I'm talking about quote unquote favorable terms, I always say that the cost of money or the terms or whatever, that's part of the terms, I suppose. The cost of money is not as important as the availability of money. If you got a 500 credit score, you never flipped a house before, you never owned a house before, and the fact that money is available to you, and let's say like an average flip, in net profit, you make around $50,000. 11.5 interest rate compared to, let's say, the low end of the spectrum, which is a 9 or even an 8% interest rate, that's the difference between you making $53,000 and $50,500. Like you're still making a pretty good amount, right? So when it comes to favorable terms, everybody has favorable terms. If you can get a good property under contract, you may pay a couple $100 more per month if you're new to the game, as opposed to having 1,000 under your belt. But I would say everything's negotiable, but the most important thing is the fact that the money is available to you, not the fact that they're charging you a percentage point higher. That makes sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I was just writing down something. One thing that I heard, I think that's important for people, the listeners, to hear is, you were talking about the difference in making 53,000 versus 50,000 and something else.
Mm-hmm.
I love this saying. It's talking about don't get hung up on the very fine details because you're stepping over dollars to save pennies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And in this business, at least flipping houses, and I love flipping houses because flipping the house isn't the only exit strategy. We have 4 or 5 different exit strategies built in, ways that we can make money, but it's not like we're running like Amazon or Walmart where those pennies can change everything, where there's a really small profit margin. Like with a Walmart, discounting a popular product by 10 cents could change everything for their books. Right, with this, yeah, if you're first like me when I first started, My first flip, I made 38 grand. If I would have found a better lender, I would have made like 41, right? But the fact is, I had an average daily balance in my bank account of less than $1,000. Like that 38 grand felt just the same as I'm sure 41 grand would have felt, right? It's just a matter of getting that start. I think the biggest piece is number one, understanding that the money is available regardless of your current situation. Now, there are some lenders that'll say, yeah, I'll only lend to people that have done 10 flips before. Or there's some people that say, I'll only lend to an 800 plus credit score. There's some that'll say, I'll only lend to you if you have a beard, right? Like their criteria is their criteria. But there are so many that don't care about that, right? That are just like, if your numbers are good, we're going to secure it by having a lien on the property, but the money is there and the interest rate may vary by a point. The favorable term, realistically, if we frame it correctly, is that the money is available, not the fact that it's like 11 instead of 10% as far as the interest is concerned.
Awesome.
At least in this business. Again, Amazon, Walmart, different stories.
Yeah. Thanks for explaining that. For people listening in right now, there might be some people out there that are still skeptical about this whole thing, or they've got a full-time job and they're like, there's no way that I can do this. How do you think someone can balance a full-time job while pursuing real estate investing, particularly through flipping houses?
Yeah, I would say the majority of people that I have the opportunity to teach have a full-time job. Now, their goal may be to either replace their full-time job, to quit it. Maybe they hate their job. There's a lot of people that love their full-time job and they have no intention of doing it. This is just a side thing. So the question is how they can do it.
Yeah. How do you?
Yeah, I think the first, it's a good, it's making me sound smart, man, because we just talked about something I'll be able to piggyback off of. The concept of leverage is something in this business that I'm from the outside looking in when I was 26 and I was like trying to do a VA business and I didn't understand the concept of leverage in general, but how leverage could be used in flipping houses. I was like, I'm not a contractor. I don't have money. I'm also not a real estate agent. How the hell can I do this? But the concept of leverage is front and center for like top 1% real estate investors. And what I mean by that is we talked about it earlier. We have our lender who brings the money in and controls the funds and how they're paid to the contractor. There's checks and balances. They're the one doing the work, not me. There's checks and balances, so they're not running away with the money, right? They get paid for work as it's completed rather than being advanced. And the real estate agent is doing the open houses or whatever it is. I'm not trying to be like condescending by saying open houses in TikTok. I'm trying to be a little funny. But with that being said, I call that the power team. Your lender, your contractor, and your real estate agent. If you have that, then the potential misconception that somebody may have, the same one that I did, which is I'm not an agent, I don't have money, and I'm not a contractor, I can't flip houses. But if you have all that stuff, realistically, you're just directing the ship. If a contractor's, hey, there's these two different types of granite, this granite's no longer available, how do you want to call an audible? I take those calls and texts, right? I'm not over there I'm not flying across the country, going to the warehouse, picking something out, running my hand on how smooth this quartz countertop is or anything like that. I get to make head coach decisions, right? I'm not the tight end running a route. And I know we talk football because you're Alabama and I'm Tennessee. It's almost like the offensive coordinator that's up in the top in the stands. It's like calling plays and watching stuff as it goes on. So that being said, we did an experiment when I first started teaching. I'm trying to find like really good marketing hooks because I've realized people were really interested in doing this, especially without having the money, being the contractor, being a real estate agent. And I was clocking how long it was taking me, like in cumulative time, even though flip may take 4 or 5 months, like how much time did I actually spend communicating with the lender, contractor, and agent? And it was a total of between 5 and 7 hours on the flip set that we were doing. Oh, even though it was over the course of 5 months, I may have a 15-minute conversation here, 10-minute conversation here. So I was like, 5-hour flips, that's going to be great. And nobody liked that. It completely bombed. 5-hour flips. I have the website, but it's OPM. People like that way more. But if you allow yourself to understand that you can be the quote unquote CEO of a flipping business that requires renovation and money and people marketing the house, but coming to terms with the fact that there are lenders, contractors, and real estate agents that are much better than you at doing each of those things, Like realistically, and it won't be 5 hours at first, but you can, if you have a 9 to 5, you put in an hour or two after work, or you can take your lunch break and return some text messages. You can look at properties that come onto Redfin because those directly feed into the MLS. Like the API allows us to see on Zillow and Redfin, not y'all's private comments and stuff like that, but we can see what's on the market, how long it's been on the market, price reductions. We can run comps on Redfin. If you're willing to put in a couple hours after work's over during our lunch break in order to communicate or send text messages with a lender, contractor, or real estate agent, like you can run the show. And you can, I would argue that if you have a proper system in place, like you can run the show really well. I make most of my money flipping houses, but I bang my head against the wall spending so much time trying to grow like the education business. But flipping houses, wholesaling houses, that kind of stuff. That still is my primary moneymaker, even though I spend minimal amount of time on it. It allows me to work on the mentorship program as my full-time thing, trying to understand it. They're like trying to understand how to grow it and scale it and learn leadership and all this crazy stuff that I'm starting to become exposed to. So that's how I do it. I would just really understand that it's not just other people's money, but it's, I would say, OPE, other people's experience or other people's expertise that you can lean into. Everybody gets paid. You get everything that's left over as the developer or flipper. And you can do that over and over again while also keeping your full-time job, unless you make enough money where it replaces that income. And that can be a very cool thing.
Yeah, I think you just coined a new term, OPE. I like
Now,
that.
I've used it before. It doesn't sound as good as OPM.
Yeah, I still like it. So what I just heard out of all of that is one, you got to learn to leverage yourself, and I think probably one of the limiting beliefs people have with getting started in this, especially if they've got a full-time job, is thinking that they have to do everything or not realizing that you don't have to do everything and that there are other people out there, like you said, that are a lot more skilled in the different areas. You just got to spend the time finding those people and cultivating and creating those relationships. And then a second part of what I heard about all of that was going back to what we talked about earlier, somewhat on the side of not quitting, but more so on the side of how bad do you want it? If you got a full-time job and people are like, oh, I got kids, I got this, yeah, but how bad do you want it? Realistically, that's what it boils down to. Is just for instance, when I was going through my broker's course, I had to wait until late at night. I was staying up until 12, 1 o'clock in the morning going through my broker's course because that's when the world was quiet. That's when I had the time to even be able to do it. Otherwise, I'd never have my broker's license if I didn't put in the time and the effort. And sometimes you just got to make that sacrifice. And see, that's one thing is a lot of people aren't willing to make a sacrifice. I think people get into their head and they think it's going to take a lot longer than they expect. But there's going to come a time and a period where you have to sacrifice for a certain period of time to build something to where it needs to be able to leverage yourself to not have to spend as much time anymore than you did when you first got started.
Yeah, there's always something that's sacrificed. And me and my wife like sitting on the couch after we put our kids down and like sending each other funny reels that we see on Instagram, right? And
We did
like
that.
there's been times where I've done that for an hour and a half and we're just cracking up. We're not even saying a word. Is our relationship healthy? But and sometimes we watch certain shows on TV. I just finished SEAL Team. It was,
Oh, I love that.
yeah, it was dope. Tulsa King's great too. But if you look at that, a lot of people, and I'm not going to make a blanket statement saying everybody can find a couple of hours because some people literally can't, and I get that. Sometimes it's let's view how we maybe watch a certain sports team or how we follow along on binge watching something on Netflix or whatever, or how much screen time we have on our phone after the kids are down or whatever it is. But you could take that hour. Like when I teach, I can, in our group, when we teach somebody to get into the business, I can guarantee that they get a property under contract within 60 days, what we said. We've never had someone not do that. But all we ask them for is between 1 and 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. And then I can take somebody that has zero experience to actually like having some pretty good momentum. But it's just a matter of whether somebody's willing to take that hour and a half and be intentional with it, sacrifice whatever they were doing. Let's say they were doing yoga and not watching TV. I'm not trying to say everybody watches TV and that's their thing, although a lot of people do. Let's say people go for a long walk or they're listening to a podcast at that time. Like an hour and a half a day. And with video content, you put stuff on 2x speed and really shorten that time frame as well. Being able to do that, and I think that the key word is being intentional with it. With the resources, like I call it, the way that we teach it is it's a combination of human resources. And tech isn't like AI, it's like Zillow and Redfin. When I first started, Zillow didn't have, or Redfin didn't have all the information. Like I had to borrow a friend's MLS access, and two people couldn't be logged in at the same time. So I'd have to wait for them to log off. And that's how I was like analyzing properties. Now I can just go on my phone on Redfin and look at a house that there's a for sale by owner sign on and run comps on Redfin and be able to email or text message the real estate agent all while driving by or about to go to lunch with my wife or something like that. The game, if you learn to leverage things correctly and you're willing to put in a little bit of, it's not even that hard of work, but it's smart work, intentional work. Yeah, I would say anybody can play it. And I don't know how much time we have, Ben. I could tell you a tearjerker story on how I learned that.
Go for it.
Do we have time? I don't want to disrespect the audience.
I got time if you got time.
I do. I have time. I've got about 20 minutes. So when I first started, I went to that seminar and I lived in Southern California. And after I went to the seminar, I still had certain questions. Like I learned how to run numbers, which is important. And I had the highest belief in myself ever because it's like testimonials. They were trying to emotionally get me to believe I could do it. And they took my money and that was that. But I like best investment I've ever made. But I said, man, I need more information. What can I do? Start going to these local meetup groups, right? There's like the Knoxville Real Estate Investor. It was the Temecula Real Estate Investors Club. And they had like a lunch and learn type thing in evenings, like once every 2 weeks, twice a month. And so I started going and I had limited knowledge. I had never done anything, but I had the knowledge. I started just networking, asking people like, hey, what do you do? How can I help? How can I provide value? This was my new identity. And I was just trying to immerse myself into it. But the one thing that I saw is is mainly dudes in this specific group, but the ladies and dudes that had the most success, they were typically like these old people that drove a BMW. They had their own brokerage. They had their own contractors in-house, and they were using their own money, right? And based on watching them, I thought that someday I would have to get the BMW or Mercedes or whatever, which I think I had a Chevy Malibu at the time. But I thought that I would have to learn construction, right? And learn what real estate agents were doing. Sorry, I'm getting I don't know if you heard that, but I got like a Slack invite. I didn't turn that off. So what I started doing when I started having success is I was only flipping houses in Southern California. And I would be on site every day driving around my little Malibu, going to Starbucks to meet agents, going to the houses and looking at them before I made offers, doing Home Depot runs, right? And I loved it. I was spending 60 hours a week doing this. And it was like the American dream. I was making money now. I had a quote unquote successful business. My wife was a physical therapist and she was working long hours too. And we were living the American dream, right? It's like success and I'm doing this and I'm creating for myself and this is great. But spending 6 days a week doing that, driving everywhere, only doing stuff close to me. And it was April 6th of 2013. I had flipped maybe 10, 12 houses at this point. We got a call. We went to a friend's birthday party and my wife, she left her phone in the car. She got back to the car. It was like a beautiful day too. And she had 10 missed calls from a Washington State number. She was like, oh, that's weird. She's from Washington State. And it was the sheriff of the area that she lived in. And her dad was murdered, shot and killed on a property line dispute. It had to do with real estate, but he was murdered. And we had to drop everything and fly up there like that night. And we were there dealing with the media, the district attorneys, getting his affairs in order, funeral. We were there for a month. So I went from creating this momentum, being everything in my business, thinking that I needed to know everything, to I told everybody what happened. I said, hey, lender, contractor, real estate agent, y'all talk to each other. The money's going to the contractor from the lender, and the real estate agent's keeping track of everything, trying to pre-market the property. So you guys could text me when you want. I may not be responsive. This is a really hard time. We were there for 3 or 4 weeks, and I would always have a Friday call with everybody for, I think I had 2, 3 deals going on at that time. On Friday, call, get updates. And I just learned to be very pointed in my communication and my expectations. And everybody responded really well. I got back, and that was really tough. It was tough for our marriage. We had just been married for 4 or 5 months at this point. It was 6 weeks to the day after we lost my father-in-law that my dad had a heart attack and passed away. And so I had to do the same thing. Like, now I didn't deal with the media or anything like that. There's no court cases. That's hard. Like, I'm named after my dad. I had a great relationship with my dad. And I had to go through the same song and dance for a few weeks. And I told her, hey, like, my dad passed. Back to like, text me if you need me. I'll talk to you on Fridays and all that kind of stuff. But I got back from that. It was hard, and I missed my dad. He didn't get to see me be a dad. He wasn't able to become a grandpa. I give it anything to be able to talk to him about that because it makes me look at life a little bit differently. But when I got back, the silver line, so here's the whole silver lining behind this, is I got back, my real estate agent of the 3 properties that we had already pre-sold 2 of them, he was just waiting for me to put my signature on these. And we weren't even using DocuSign. It was like a wet signature. And like everything had gone faster and better than when I was there micromanaging in person, right? Like I didn't have to go and do Home Depot runs. I didn't have to ask the contractor what was going on every 2 hours, right? Like they got stuff done quicker. Now, I may be proudly the most immature dude in the real estate investing game, right? I never want to grow up, but I ain't dumb, right? The only thing that was removed from the situation was me being present everywhere all the time. Things went better when I removed myself, and things were effective when I spent, rather than 60 hours a week, I spent 30 minutes a week talking to everybody. And so I was like, some people may call me dumb, but I ain't stupid. So that's when I started. I was like, if I could do this without being there. I was in 2 different states at the time over 8-week period, and everything went better than when I was there. It's like I try to do this in other areas. Maybe it was wrong about the old guy with the BMW that had his brokerage, had contract construction license. He was a GC, had his people in-house. Oh, okay. This is something that's different and nobody's talking about it. And that's when things blew up for me. I tried it like 400 miles away. So in my mind, I was like, I could drive there in 6 hours, or I could take like a 45-minute flight and get to that area. So in case something did hit the fan, like I feel comfortable, I'm gonna try to do this without being there. And it worked. Now there were certain things that I had to work on with like my communication of expectations, specifically with contractors, but the agents and the lenders were good. Contractor stuff was good too. I just didn't know how to set expectation. I was like 28, 29 at the time. Didn't really know how to tell a contractor, this is what I expect, even though maybe a difficult conversation. But I started learning that. And like I was doing well. I made 6 figures my first year. The second year, like it only went up from there. And then that third year, once I started using this concept of leverage, like that's when everything went crazy. That's when, and I tried to stay really private. People started noticing me, inviting me to keynote at their seminars and do Q&As and do advanced, write their curriculum. That's when stuff went bananas. And so I know that we're talking, it's one thing to just say, yeah, you can do it. Use a realtor, use your power team and use leverage. But and I don't like telling that story. I typically, if I'm not on a podcast, I get goosebumps. I tear up when I tell that story. But it's important.
Chills.
Yeah, it's important to understand. Learning this was something that I wasn't seeking. It was something that happened to me. It's a silver lining from it. And I feel like in teaching it, it's honoring my dad. He's a good dude, and he's got the same name as me, which is excellent. But like, it wasn't just this concept where it was like, oh, this is how you do it, and I had to learn in a very hard, traumatic way, like that this would work, and then test it over and over again and figure out like how it works. There is a way to do it and spend minimal amount of time doing it if you're trying to keep a 9 to 5, or you need to keep a 9 to 5 as you come up in the business. And with that being said, also, there's a tremendous opportunity to be able to scale if someone ever gets into a position where they want to be a full-time real estate investor and they have the ability to quit a job that they may not love. If you're spending 5 cumulative hours, or let's say 10 cumulative, that's a hard word for me to say, cumulative hours on a flip over the course of 4 or 5 months, we got 40 hours in a quote unquote work week. If you're looking at 8 hours a day, it's like, how much can you really stack yourself up with if you're working intentionally and with discipline on a system that's repetitive? And that's where I came up in my journey. It wasn't until 2014, 2015 where I had done it a few times, and I messed up with stuff. and trying to figure it out. And that's really, I think, that was a big catalyst that brought me to the next level of my career and being a real estate investor. And then all the stuff that I've learned throughout it with communication, especially with people with egos and expectation setting and giving people praise and taking accountability, came from once I scaled that up and was able to do so much volume. It's if I get more reps in, I learn so much quicker than someone doing one a year or two of them a year. If I'm doing 10 like right now, I've got 13 of them going on, and I'm like chilling and doing podcasts and coaching baseball. If I can stack myself up, pull the lever on how busy I want to be or how chill I want my life to be, like once you have a system in place that's internalized and you understand how to be the driver of the car in that system, like the opportunity becomes very lucrative, not only financially, but also with like how you want to create your own. Is this an audio only podcast or can people see us on video?
They'll be able to see us on my YouTube channel.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw like 20 minutes ago, I was choking on my own spit. So my eyes started getting, but sorry about that, guys. But I wear cheap t-shirts, shorts. I'm wearing like I get to dress how I want. I get to live a life that's truly authentic to me. And some people may call me a weirdo, and that's cool. I like that. But I get to be me and live my life based on what I think is cool or fun or like impactful for my family and my kids, because I have this system that backs me up. Like, I don't have to do this teaching thing. I happen to freaking love it. Like the good and the bad that comes from it. I don't have to do it. I can do it because I want to. I have the option to do that. And I'm not trying to like boast or anything like that, but real estate is what opened the door for me to be able to build a business because I want to, or coach my kids' team, which is I keep saying that it's a very important thing for me. Like my dad worked on weekends, so he could never coach my teams when I was growing up playing sport. Like it's very important for me. Like I get to do that because I have the option. And a lot of people say like wealth, but a lot of people give a description of wealth and it goes in a lot of different directions, a lot of time financially. But one that resonates with me is true wealth means you have options. And the more options that you have, the more wealthy you are. And I feel like I'm very wealthy because I can do the shit that I want to do. That's impactful for me. And that may look different. I still drive a 2014 4Runner that I happen to not have washed in 3 months because there's baseball. It smells like a locker room with my kids. Like I get to live the life that I want. If I want to buy a Bentley, hey, that might be cool. It's not my thing, but I can do that. I can make the decision. I have that choice, that option. And so that's why real estate investing and real estate in general, also circling back to when I said I think it's a tragedy or travesty, because I don't know which word to use in that situation. Maybe they both apply, that they don't teach this stuff in school, because you don't have to have a bunch of experience. You don't need to have a college degree. You don't need a high school diploma to be able to do this. You need to be able to make offers on property, run basic numbers with a calculator, and control a property and put it in front of a lender, like basic math, in order to be able to open up so many doors of opportunities for ourselves. I will keep shouting that from the rooftops, regardless of how much the people criticize me on my paid ads or tell me that my beard doesn't look good, which by the way, it does, you guys. For the visual only people, that's a little inside joke that I have. But yeah, that's what I get fired up about this. I love talking about it. It's why I built a business about teaching it. Like, because it's opened so many doors. And it's a way to honor my dad. It's a way for me to do cool stuff with my kids. It's a way for me to have the space to build a business and still be okay if everything hit the fan, because I know how to go and write offers on property and source a power team of lenders, contractors, and real estate agents that can work with me, and everybody wins at the end of the day.
Yeah, thanks, man, for being vulnerable. See, that's a word I can't say.
Vulnerable.
And opening up like that and saying that, man, I hate to hear that. I hate that's been your experience in life, because I think about it probably too often, but just because I think about realities and understanding how life is. But I still have my dad that I don't know what I'm going to do when he's not here anymore.
Well,
So,
it's a part of life, man. It was hard. It was very hard. It forced losing my pops, forced me to grow up in ways that I wasn't expecting. And even if it's something that you don't see on the outside and it's just inside, like you step into this new role in your family. And yeah, it was hard. But I didn't have a ton of, my dad was the only, when I tried to start a business, my dad was the only person in my life. Everybody was like looking out for me, but they're like, hey, that might be a little risky. You may want to stay in your lane, stay with a job that has benefits. And I was like, no, I'm going to do this. And my dad was like, you could do anything you want.
That's
You
awesome.
work hard. Yeah. So it's cool to be able to honor them. And it's part of life. Death is part of the
It
human
is.
experience,
Yeah, it's reality. That's why I say I think about it because I think about realities. You said something else talking about what clothes you wear and stuff like that. And that just reminds me of when I first became a realtor. So I just come off a deployment, took my test overseas so that way I could take my state national test when I got back. And I never really owned any suits at that point. I was like 29, 30 when I first started, so 7 years ago.
Mhm.
And when I first got back, never owned any suits. I thought I had to be that guy. And I went to Men's Warehouse and I bought three really nice suits. Still have them to this day. One of them, I think Kenneth Cole, they had some kind of collection where they donated to veterans helping getting in the workforce. So I love that suit. It's blue. It looks good. I thought that's what I had to be. And then I got into it. And there's nothing wrong with wearing that and being that way. Everybody's character, personality is different and that every now and then I like to dress up. But I realized one why I got into this, and that you don't have to be that way. And it's more so that what I'm trying to get at is just being yourself. A lot of people think that you have to put on this persona and you got to look a certain way and wear the certain clothes and drive the certain car and wear the watch or whatever the case may be. The reality is just be who you are, be you, and you're going to attract like people. I'm
Yep.
gonna get on a little tangent, but along the lines, people are like, "Oh, be careful when you're running a business." To an extent, you do, but they're like, "Be careful what you say." I try to stay out of politics, but there's been times where I've commented on stuff or whatever,
Yeah.
and
Sometimes you can't help it these days, man.
yeah, yeah,
I
but
experienced that too.
the whole point is people think, oh, you're going to lose so much business. You're going to kill your business if you say a certain thing or do a certain thing. And what I found out is, yeah, you'll lose all the business of the people that you don't want to do business with, and you'll gain all the business of the people that you do want to do business with. But so many people are so scared and afraid to say and do what they want. Say whatever you want. Don't get and crazy, like insanely crazy, but just be you. That's the point.
Yeah.
Be you, let people
Yep.
know what you think, how you feel, and that you'll attract those people.
And don't be a dick.
Yeah,
Add that caveat. Yeah, I love that you said attract. That's something that I teach when it comes to networking is attract, don't chase, right? Provide value and be the person that people are drawn to, be the best version of yourself. And that I think that's helpful, especially when people are just getting in and feeling like they need to be someone that they're not. As far as real estate investors, new real estate investors trying to get a new power team, trying to get their lenders in order and so forth. But from a macro standpoint, with what you said, I'm just like, you probably saw me. It's like, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I'm over here doing hand motions. People, I think in a time where, especially in the social media age where people pretend to be perfect, right? I think there's this yearning for real. People like real. People are attracted, to use this term that we're talking about. People are attracted to real, right?
real and raw.
Authenticity, which is like that buzzword out there right now. If we can be authentically ourselves and maybe a little quirky, I think most people that that have followed my page, they think, oh, he's a weird dude. He's very interesting. I'm like, yeah, I suppose I am. People are attracted to that when someone is genuinely themselves and unapologetically themselves, whether it's how they speak or what they share about whether it's politics or whatever. Like there's this limitation, I think, in society, especially with social media and especially in a political time frame, where people just want something real and raw. They want someone to be themselves, flaws and everything. Show your scars. Now, the scary thing about it is when you're authentic and you attract, like attracts like, you also stand out and provide an opportunity for people that are detracted from your personality or your authenticity to be able to raise their hand and let you know that as well. And that can be scary. And that was one of the scariest things for me when I started the coaching business was like, they're not going to like me. And now I'm like, well, good. They shouldn't like me. Like I'm a unique guy. I'm not going to get along with everybody. People may think that I talk too much or here in the South, they say I have an accent. The West Coast, maybe they don't like my quote unquote accent, although I feel like I talk normal. But yeah, one of the key concepts of marketing is good marketing or even good advertising is not only to attract your target avatar, but as you said, it's also to detract, or I'm trying to find a stronger word from it, but detract the people that aren't going to be a good fit that wouldn't ever like you anyway. It'd be tough to work. They just may dislike how you look or what you say or how you talk or whatever it is. So that's another thing, going back into the point of having negative comments on an ad or something like that. That means it's working. You're filtering through the correct people and you're filtering out the wrong people. That's the point of marketing, is both of those. It's not just to find the right people, but it's also to get the wrong people, away from you. You got to social distance from the wrong people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely, man. You hit the nail on the head on that one.
Hey, Ben, I have a hard cut.
So Flip Secrets, what are your future goals for that and in the real estate investing community you built?
Yeah. My big goal, which I don't know if I'll ever reach it, is I want to impact 5 million people. That was something at the very beginning. Some business coach said, give yourself some crazy goal. It's a macro goal. It's not like some super tactical thing. Like, what do you want to do? So the end goal is to impact 5 million people through the gospel of real estate investing. I mean, I have micro goals, I have quarterly goals and that kind of stuff. But ultimately, I think it's a travesty/tragedy that they don't teach this in school. I look back to where I grew up, and there's a lot of people that ended up doing stuff that wasn't necessarily legit on the streets, that were the most brilliant people ever, but got into something that wasn't legal and ended up going to jail. I think about people like that. Man, you're much smarter than me and much more like assertive and aggressive and smooth than I am. Like I look at some of the people I grew up with. It's, man, if they knew that this was something that they could use to create and do it legally, like, things could have been so much different. So I keep that in mind. I think the education system does a disservice by leaving this out. And I think it's intentional, by the way. I believe the education system, traditional education system, wants us reliant on the system rather than self-reliant. And yeah, my goal is to positively impact through this vehicle 5 million folks out there.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate you being on the show today. And if anybody wants to reach out to Jake, I'm sure you can just Google his name. And also, if you want to get into the home flipping business, make sure you check out Flip Secrets, a great program that Jake's put together.
Can I give you a link just so people don't mess up with it?
Oh, yeah. We'll put it on the show notes and everything.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Do you want me to tell it right now?
Yeah, go for it.
It's theflipsecrets.com. If you just go to flipsecrets.com. And there's actually month to month, we run like promotions, or you can talk with our investors or stuff like that. That's typically at theflipsecrets.com/exclusive. If you have a link, I would put that one up. It allows people to access our team and be able to talk, ask questions, and so forth.
Perfect. Yeah. So y'all make sure you go to theflipsecrets.com. And again, thanks for being on the show today. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, whether you're listening on a podcast or you're watching this video on my YouTube channel, Wiregrass Veteran Realtor. And make sure you check the show notes or description for links to different resources on how to start, manage, and scale a business, as well as resources for real estate agents and investors. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you all got some value out of this, and we'll see you on the next one.
Hey, thank you, Ben. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jake. Thanks for joining me on the Real Estate and Business Success Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's insights and are ready to apply these strategies to your own business endeavors. If you found value in the episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others who might benefit. Stay tuned for more interviews with successful entrepreneurs and actionable advice to drive your business forward. Until next time, keep pushing for success, and remember, success is just around the corner.